The college football playoff is no stranger to controversy, and you can expect more of it in 2019. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And today we are bringing you a special college football playoff scenario video, trying to determine which of these three teams would capture the final spot in 2019's college football playoff. Now, our official playoff predictions and New Year's Six bowl game predictions will be coming out tomorrow. So we have already determined who we believe out of these three teams should get the number 4 spot in 2019's college football playoff. But when we were doing those predictions, we did have a tough time picking that team. And we're going to break down the scenario here and try to hear what you guys have to say on who should get the last spot, who will be in on Selection Sunday come December. Now, before we begin, I mentioned at the beginning that the playoff is no stranger to controversy. And of course, we have seen over the years, now entering the 6th year of the playoff, teams that have been left out that maybe should have gotten in when the committee released their final rankings in mid-December. In 2014, there was a big-time controversy, the first year of the college football playoff, as TCU and Baylor were both left out of the college football playoff. Ohio State got in as the number 4 team and ended up winning the national championship over Oregon. But many consider TCU to be the biggest snub in college football playoff history, not being able to get in as that number 4 spot, being led by a dominant offense by Trayvon Boykin, and once again, a phenomenal job by Gary Patterson. But the downfall for TCU, and Baylor for that matter, was not only their strength of schedule, but also the fact that the Big 12 at that time did not have a conference championship game. Well, shortly after that, the Big 12 implemented a conference championship game, and now we have seen Oklahoma multiple years make the college football playoff. But that is considered one of the biggest snubs of all time. In 2015, there was not that much controversy. But in 2016, many believed that Penn State should have gotten in there despite being a 2-loss team. They had one loss to Pittsburgh, and the other loss was a blowout loss to Michigan. But the Nittany Lions still ended up winning the Big Ten over Wisconsin, but number 4 Washington was able to slip in there to face off against Alabama, the Huskies going 12-1, their lone loss to a good USC team. But I do believe that had Penn State not lost in that narrow fashion to Pittsburgh, the Nittany Lions would have made the college football playoff. In 2017, there was some major controversy. Number 4 Alabama got into the college football playoff and ended up winning the national championship over Georgia instead of Ohio State getting in to the college football playoff. Many believed it should have been the Buckeyes. Alabama only had one loss, and that loss was to Auburn, who made the SEC title game and then fell to Georgia. Ohio State was an 11-2 team, but had 2 losses by double digits. One, a good loss to Oklahoma. The other, a horrible, major blowout loss to Iowa. And that was the downfall for the Buckeyes. Many believe that Alabama should not have gone to the college football playoff despite not even playing for their conference championship game. Ohio State ended up winning the Big Ten. But nonetheless, Bama got in and won the national championship. And last year, Georgia was left out of the playoff in favor of 12-1 Oklahoma. A very similar situation we have here that we will break down in a second. Georgia only had 2 losses. One to LSU, a very dominant team, and the other, a narrow loss to Alabama in the SEC title game. Oklahoma was a 1-loss team, losing to Texas in the regular season, but got their revenge over the Longhorns in the Big 12 title game. The Sooners got in, but ended up falling to Alabama in the college football playoff semifinals. So there has been their fair share of controversy in just 5 years of the college football playoff, and I can promise you there will be more in year 6, especially if our predictions come true. And we'll start up here with LSU. We have the Tigers going 11-1, 7-1 in conference play. Their only loss coming on the road to Alabama. And assuming this game is fairly close, this game at Bryant-Denny Stadium is a very difficult place to play. But if LSU loses this game by 10 points or less, they can make a very strong case for getting into the college football playoff. They're a 1-loss team. You know they will not be playing for the SEC title game. That would go to Alabama, who would win the West. But I guarantee that Tiger fans and the Tiger faithful will be drawing comparisons to what happened in 2017, where Alabama was a 1-loss team, did not even play in the title game, but still got into the playoff. LSU could hope that would be the case for them. I expect a big year from Ed Orgeron and the Tigers, one of the best defenses in the entire nation, and of course an offense that will once again be much better than they were last year, which is scary to think about because they were good last year with Joe Burrow and a dominant crew of wide receivers. Now, LSU at 11-1, if they were to slip up one more time, whether that is on the road against Texas or whether that is an SEC play, you can automatically write them out of college football playoff discussion. But right now, for this scenario, we have them at 11-1, the only loss, a respectable loss, at Alabama. Then comes Georgia, and this is the one that throws everything into a loop. Georgia sitting at 11-2 based on our predictions. 7-1 in the regular season in SEC play. Their only loss on the road at Auburn. And then, of course, making the SEC title game, where I expect them to fall in narrow fashion once again to Alabama. So Georgia would have what we would expect two close losses to two SEC West teams and did, in fact, make the SEC title game. Well, that's exactly what happened to the Bulldogs last year. They went on the road and fell to an SEC West opponent. Last year was LSU. This year we have it being Auburn. Then they went to the title game and lost by just 7 points to Alabama. If that is the same case for Georgia, I don't know if they're going to be able to get in. Will the committee put in a two-loss Georgia team? I think it will come down to margin of loss. I think it will come down to how respectable they lose to Auburn and Alabama. And I can promise you this. We all know it. If Georgia does beat Alabama in the SEC title game, they're in. If they beat Auburn and fall to Alabama in the SEC title game, I believe that they are in. But right now, based on our predictions, we have them losing in the regular season. I don't think Georgia can get into the playoff if they lose 2 times. They can afford to lose once, whether it's a loss to Auburn and then a win against Alabama in the title game, or whether it's an undefeated season and a loss to Alabama in the title game. I think both of those scenarios Georgia gets in, but do they get in at 11-2? With LSU sitting at 11-1 and Oklahoma sitting at 12-1, the exact same scenario we saw last year, 12-1, one loss in conference play, that loss coming to their rival in Texas, but Oklahoma wins the Big 12 title game again over Texas, getting their revenge over the Longhorns. Does Oklahoma get in? I think when you look at these 3 teams, I think you can maybe say, to write Georgia out, that really it's a battle between Oklahoma and LSU for a spot in the college football playoff, for that number 4 spot. 2 teams sitting here with 1 losses, one of them a Big 12 champion, the other one, their only loss, respectively, to Alabama, the SEC champion. No disrespect to Georgia. We mentioned the 2 scenarios that we think the Bulldogs can get in. But with these 2 teams sitting here, assuming these predictions do hold, I don't know if Georgia could get in for that number 4 spot. You've got 3 teams battling for 1 spot. And right now, I think resume-wise, you've got 2 teams that are better than Georgia in that regard. Many people will be quick to point at Oklahoma's strength of schedule, saying that their strength of schedule is not nearly as tough as Georgia's or LSU. LSU having to travel to Alabama, they have to travel to Texas, and of course have to face the rest of their SEC slate. Same can be said for Georgia, who will face Notre Dame in the offseason, in the regular season, and will have a very big resume booster if they do in fact beat the Fighting Irish, and then playing in the rugged SEC, only losing to 2 SEC West teams, both that should be decent in 2019. Alabama dominant, Auburn, in our opinion, decent. So you have to put that into perspective. What will the committee do in this situation? I do not think that the committee can keep out the Big 12 champion, the one-loss Big 12 champion, and their lone loss coming to a Texas team that we have winning 10 games. If Texas, for some reason, fell off the rails and only won 6 or 7 games, you could make a case for Oklahoma to be left out. But on the flip side, if that loss was to Texas, who didn't end up being that good, you can see Oklahoma facing a different team in the Big 12 title game. Maybe that team is Iowa State. Maybe that team is TCU. Maybe that team is the big-time dark horse in Baylor. So could that Big 12 title make up for that? Conference championships go a long way. We saw that in 2014 when TCU and Baylor missed out because they didn't have one. We've seen that in some scenarios where maybe a Notre Dame team that maybe only has 1 loss this season could get left out because they are an independent and don't have a conference championship. So those go a long way. And that's why I think Oklahoma, having that Big 12 champion on their name, to their name, could get them into the playoff over 2 dominant SEC teams in LSU and Georgia. And it's a wild scenario that is bound to cause a lot of controversy if indeed this is how it plays out towards the end of November after conference championship weekend. And right now, I think you can make a very strong case that that's exactly what's going to happen. Personally, I don't see Georgia going undefeated this season. They will lose somewhere down the road. And as many people have mentioned and have pointed out to me, Georgia has been unable to beat an SEC West team on the road under Kirby Smart. They fell to Auburn 2 years ago. They fell to LSU last year. It just hasn't happened. Maybe the trend will continue. We'll have to wait and find out. LSU, a team that could very well go 11-1. 10-2, they're out. Erase their name off the board. We've got them at 11-1 right now. Same can be said for Oklahoma. They lose twice, they're out. And that's going to have to be what happens for Georgia. They're going to have to hope that maybe some of these teams slip up if they indeed want to make the college football playoff and make it 2 times that we've seen 2 teams from the same conference make the college football playoff. But nonetheless, it's going to spark a lot of controversy. That's what makes the college football playoff so fun. That's what makes the selection show and just the course of this playoff series so exciting. Who is going to get in? Find out tomorrow when we release our official college football playoff predictions and our New Year's 6 bowl game predictions. I can promise you, you're not going to want to miss it. So guys, once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert. And of course, go visit our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our newsletter and sign up for our expert picks. For just $30, you will receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. And I can promise you that's a deal you do not want to pass up. So join our team, sign up today only at thegridironexpert.com. And once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.